Hello everyone, welcome to today's episode. The silence beyond the simulation. Let us wonder today about the core of existence and where we really are as creatures. As far as the body is concerned, the human body is, you can see life as if it's like, imagine if it was a video game and you pressed it on pause. When you resume, it is the movement of the character in the video game that suggests the intelligence and the animation of the character. So what does that mean? That means when we move, we simulate realness. When we speak, we simulate realness. In complete silence, there is no movement of noise. There are two factors, two ideas in this talk that are very crucial for anybody who wants to communicate, move, or just function in this plane of existence. In this reality that we're in. Silence and stillness. And you might be like, is someone talking about silence to me? The thing is, just like consciousness and let's say stuff in space. You know, everybody looks at this cosmos, can to some degree see its stuff in space. Silence is the space before your mind moves. Stillness is the space before your body moves. If the being can become comfortable, if you can sit somewhere and be silent and still with no other idea, no agenda, no meditation, nothing. You can just be. You can just watch your being as if you're watching from the eyes of an actor in the middle of a film. If the simulation is considered the human simulation of being an animate creature, you know, in Italian, in English, the word animal means a creature, but in Italian, the word anima means soul. And that what set apart creatures, stuff from intelligent stuff was the acknowledgement of the stuff of itself. We are right now. I'm of course I am existent in the biological human body, but I could totally see if this coffee cup in front of me suddenly began speaking and moving around, grew legs and started walking on the table and speaking, it would suddenly be like, whoa, suddenly there is an animate factor to this coffee cup, Sorry guys, I don't know why that metaphor was, I think in my childhood I'd seen this cartoon of, what was it, Beauty and the Beast or something, where the candle talked or something. I thought the idea of reality being a simulation years ago. I thought it was modern. I was like, whoa! Scientists talking about, the reality being potentially a simulation. <clears throat> 'Cause, 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 But it's not modern. It's super ancient. It's that now we're calling it a simulation. A man named Michael Talbot called it the holographic simulation. Back in the day, they would call it a dream. That was it. They didn't have the word simulation. They would say life is a dream. All those mystics, yogis, all those practices around the world where they had a renunciation component to it. People don't know. People don't know. It's like they open their eyes from the point they are born, not realizing how many types of actions. That means there is a huge chance a person born now I don't know how to say it. You know how in thermodynamics we have energy cannot be created or destroyed. It can change from one form to another. Do you know? That means something remains, but something changes. And so the way I've kind of noticed this about this whole idea of simulation theory is that silence and stillness are unmoving. They are not qualities of doership. That this is why many people, when there's silence, imagine you're giving a talk and somebody just comes and says, "Be quiet, man." You know? When you suddenly get silence, you notice it is the denial of the authorization of the inner voice. That means I feel we are living behind our eyes before any of our actions are visible in front of our eyes. Right now, me giving this talk, I'm telling you, there is more. You know, there's a novelty factor. There's an antenna component to the human being. You know, there's something about the mind that engages. That as it engages, it sees the dimensions of its engagement. It sees the new. This Zen master Chuang Tzu. One day, his disciples come and see him. He's frowned early morning, sitting at the corner of this monastery, let's say by the mountains, for story's sake. You know, this monastery at the top of the mountains, this dude is sitting at the edge of the monastery, technically at the edge of the mountain, and just staring. And his disciples come and they're like, "Chuang Tzu, you know, you great Zen master, why are you depressed? And if you're depressed, we're doomed." You know? And Chuang Tzu looks at the disciples and says, "Guys, I had a dream." And they're like, "You had a dream?" And he's like, Chuang Tzu says, "Yeah, I had a dream. And in the dream, I dreamed I was a butterfly. And I couldn't tell. I couldn't tell after waking up if I am a Zen master that dreamt of a butterfly or if I am a butterfly dreaming I'm a Zen master. Because at the moment of the dream, inside the dream, being a butterfly was way more real than being a Zen master." So you see, your mind is an incredibly advanced instrument that we know a little about. We know a little about. Even the mystics, yogis and whatnot, you know? I think the yogic mind knew a lot. I feel that back in the day, what we treat now as imagination wasn't so far away. You know, that it was very probable that when the subjective evolution began, the mind couldn't discriminate between what the mind was putting into position, and what the world was bringing into position by the person exploring and moving around in life. Silence is the most important skill. You know, there's the poet Rumi says silence is the language of God. All else is poor translation. Ari Gold from the Entourage series says silence is golden. You know, silence is golden, Lloyd. So that's the thing. Silence is golden because silence is space. And there's been many times, I'm telling you, like I give like I give these talks in private because then there's a certain level of controlling the direction of the talk. Usually when a person gives a talk and another mind comes in the room, it shifts the inner fabric of the talk a little. You know? That means me giving this talk, if you were in front of me, it would be a totally different approach. The addition of a mind in a room is the addition of variables. That means people have to treat their inner life like you're on an island. I'm not joking. Your inner life is not a collective phenomenon. Your inner life is individual. It's where your individualism is polished. It's where you and the cosmos stand side by side, or stand facing one another. That is the inner life. And many people who can't confront silence, stillness, or even a solitude that comes with those two qualities, they cannot see it. You know, sometimes the way we define our life locks down our life in an image. And I am saying this, there's many people as I speak right now on this planet where they are language worshippers, and everybody to some degree is a language worshiper. Everybody is using language. But when I say language worship, that means the language has become more real than you. You who are an unknown potential, you who are a pilot of your experience, the language has become more certain than you. And that's the issue. That means when you see, I'll tell you the story. There's these two frogs. There's these two frogs, and sorry guys, this is a passionate episode. If you dislike it, feel free to tune out. Two frogs, they get stuck in a hole. All the frogs from Frogville come around the circle, the hole that the two, small hole the frogs are in. The frogs are trying to jump out of this hole, they can't. All the frogs come around the hole and they're like, dead frogs walking. Instead of the community, instead of all those frogs in Frogville helping those two frogs that are in the hole, the frogs gather around the hole and they're saying again, you can't climb, don't give up, you're both dead, there's no way you're gonna ever get out of this hole. All the frogs are throwing this flame of negativity onto these two frogs. Now the story is very profound because one of the frogs stops jumping, stops trying. The words of others becomes his reality. He forgets his own eyes. He goes into a corner of the hole that both the two frogs are trying to jump out of. The frog that goes to the corner closes its eyes and dies. Dies in many ways. The second frog hasn't stopped jumping. It's weird. All the other frogs in Frogville above the hole, they're like, why is this frog still going? We got one down, the other one. And they're like, let's increase the hate, guys. Mob mentality goes crazy. They're like, you'll never get out of this hole, frog. They're all shouting. Complete hatred. Trust me, it's not that people alone are just an animal. People can be animals in groups. They just become a bigger animal. And what happens is these frogs increase the hate, increase the intensity of the cruelty. This frog is getting more energized. They start freaking out. All the frogs in Frogville are like, what the fuck? We're insulting this guy. He's getting more powerful. How's this possible? Then the frog jumps out of the hole. Suddenly. And everybody is shocked. As if Neo from the Matrix moment. And they're like, how'd you do it? Then they realize the frog isn't answering. The frog, the moral of the story was that the frog that got out of the hole was deaf. Was deaf to the nonsense. To that which the senses of the frog did not engage. Did not entertain. That means unless you are a person who is untouchable by language, That means you're not a thought. Thoughts come and go, you have tons of them, but you're not the thought. If thought can't touch you, language can't hurt you. When I look at this life, I mean, I'm happy. When I see politeness and civilization, I'm like, yes. When I see rudeness, I'm like, that's the norm. We were animals once in the forest. All these people feeling sad about the comments their YouTube gets, they don't realize there was a point we would kill each other. It wasn't even just writing a negative comment. People would get swords and they would kill each other in battlefields. It was messed up during medieval times. Kingdoms were at war. Now we have become a superior kingdom. We have been a kingdom that has understood the value of its mind. That is why violence has declined. Because we're like, wait a minute, if we're not violent, what else can the energy be used? Imagine you're a thug right now listening to my talk. What else can that energy be used for? The energy for the extremeness of reality. Because I thought about it in the future, if automation sets in, do you know how many people are going to lose their labor jobs? What's going to happen there? You're going to be left with the mind that you've been left with from the beginning. Do not fear your attention. It is the opener of worlds. Like if a world was a can, your attention is a can opener, Your attention is the hands of your mind. The hands of your mind require to hold, for now, in 2020, for now, they require to hold individualism, individual consciousness. That means whatever level of enlightenment the mystic that went to India in the mountains felt, whatever way you feel you have held the pearl of enlightenment in the mountains, you must now return to the market, to the busy market, and hold the pearl in your hand. Because the point of the selflessness of civilization, it's like, this is the question of mysticism. You went and became selfless. You went and understood the Tao of the moment. You saw beyond yourself. What does that render the teleos of life? What does that render the purpose of life? You see, your purpose suggests your engagement. Your purpose is your velocity, is your direction. Your existence is your speed. My existence is like the vehicle. My mind is like the gas pedal. It's like the steering wheel and the gas pedal. My mind is where the effort is pushed. Right now, the effort for this talk, it's coming from a certain image. You see, people feel a purpose has to be one thing. What if a being has a multidimensional purpose? What if your purpose is beyond your comprehension? What if a wrench is made, like a wrench, for, let's say, a mechanic, and that wrench may never know why it's being used, where it's being used, how the energy is existing, if the user is individual, if the user is the world. Right now I feel like, this is going to sound strange, but I feel like a computer that the whole universe is using. That means it's like there is a view that man is individual, and then there's the universe. Then there is the view, a sort of teleos, a sort of intention of purpose, where it's as if the individual was never for an individual act. The piano key wasn't just made so that it thinks it's the only thing in existence. The piano key is one of the keys. You know, no person in a symphony will suddenly feel can have an ego because they're dependent on the rest of the other instruments. You know, and so the fact that civilization has ego is a suggestion of why we see civilization 1.0 currently, the civilization we see in front of us, as being an inefficient symphony where people are not playing the instruments of their existential position and intelligence properly. That people think they just have to fly into their inner sky. It is not the case. Your inner realms are not, you're not meant to stay, when you go within, you're not meant to stay within. When you, if you are someone who has truly gone within in the way I'm saying it, then there is no such thing as inside-outside duality. You are perceiving, you're conscious beyond duality. There is 3 ways you can be conscious beyond duality. 3 types of creatures exist, you can say poetically. Not poetically, I mean, like, right now, consider language to be dualistic. So everything we look at in this world, we're like good, bad, correct, wrong, you know, this, that, you know. We have a certain preference. We have a sort of analysis of how chaotic the system is, how ordered the system is, what are the known variables in the moment, what are the unknown variables. If we were to wonder, this is duality. This is how language works, you know. The 3 potential types of dimensional existence I have considered is that 1, there is the void being. This is being without form. And if there is, it's a coin flip probability that this reality is not physical. All of it, I'm speaking. We may experience physicality here, but it doesn't mean the whole thing is physical. Just because an ant experiences how a rock is, it doesn't mean that's the nature of the whole thing. So there is void, the void being. Then there is the singular being. This idea historically in the 6th century was tapped into by the species, where the species was like, yo, it's all one. It's all one thing. Yeah. You know, it's like we felt we were the neurons in the brain of God. You know? So that's the situation. That's the second type, the singular being. The void being, there could be intelligence that is has nothing to do with form. There could be intelligence that is a singular form. There is intelligence right now, as I'm speaking to you, as you're listening, me and you are in the dualistic. We're in the linguistic simulation, me and you. We are in duality. We are dualistic creatures. You can't avoid that, you know? Look at your heart. Look at your eyes. Everything in the body has this sort of like, the inhale and exhale is felt by the whole body. People are not sensitive, but you might not believe. If you inhale from your nose, and you're super, you have a preference list to your attention, okay, so affluent for you. I see your comment in the chat section, man. Give me a second. Let me just finish this picture I'm painting, and then I'll attend to your comment. So there is the void being, the singular being. Then there is the third being. This is what we are all fascinated by. This is our unknown. This is where dualism can go. And this concept, I'm telling you guys, it is... here, I'll say this. The third type of being is how once you have access, once you have completely observed duality, duality is all you need to create infinity. Two dualities and that's it. I could have just this view of the known and the unknown and the simple and complex, and all of manifestation can fit in. There is an infinite allowance that all phenomena is either simply known, simply unknown, or complexly known, complexly unknown. It's all variables. People have to realize language, it has a geometry to it. You look at a snowflake under a microscope, there is a geometry. We are natural beings. Language is a natural development. Even though it feels unnatural, but it's natural development. There's a geometry at work, and geometry is the language of nature. It is the secret language of nature, and for an animate being, for a conscious animate being, it's geometry plus rhythm. And if you are a being on this planet where you have tapped into a geometrical rhythm, then most likely you don't have the time for space. Alright guys, so Affluent for You in the chat section says, I feel most of your listeners grasp these basic concepts. The issue is not grasping the concept. I hope when I say a word, you guys understand, what you see an image to the word. You know, you comprehend it. But what the issue is the agreement. The issue, Affluent for You, as a response to your question, the issue is 8 billion creatures on a rock. In front of their eyes, they're in one physical realm. Behind their eyes, they have subjective angles on the physical realm. Do you see what I mean? This is the situation. This is what people have avoided. This is what people throughout history have thought was too complex and did not attempt to look at the problem. You know, the problem of the human being, you got to consider Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And I'm going to just show you, I'm not going to explain Maslow's hierarchy of needs, I've done it in other episodes, but pretty much it's this spectrum of various things you do as a social creature in this world to self-actualize yourself. There we go. So guys, this is Maslow's hierarchy of needs, check it out. I want you to just consider Maslow's hierarchy of needs and consider you're a human being. You've taken care of your physiological needs. You know, you're breathing, you eat food, you drink water, you have sex, you sleep, you know, you function. Then you have safety. Safety of body, safety of employment. God, it's too small, I can't read. Safety of resources, morality, the family, health, and property. That means after you have taken care of your individual biological kingdom, then you start taking care of your outer kingdom. Do you know? You go towards safety. Everybody needs their space. There isn't a single creative person on this planet who, without space, creativity can't happen. Did you know? You need space to do stuff. This is reality. If you're someone who, for example, is looking down on yourself, that's what's happening to human beings. Human beings are being born not realizing that they're not the language they're conditioned into. And so they either look down upon themselves or they look up at themselves. There was a time where it was so easy for me to look down. You know, there was a time that there was a situation I learned the hard way where I was right. I had seen something ahead and I had seen the consequence of something, and I was right, but I was with a group. I was with a gathering. And I told everyone, hey, this is what the outcome's going to be. Listen to me. And people didn't. People said no. And I wasn't brave enough at the time to know my own knowing, if I can say that. You know? And I remember I said, okay, I'm wrong probably. If everybody's saying something else, I'm wrong. Only for me to see I was right. And I was like, oh, look at this life. You know, look at in how many things we trust, which we don't know the outcome of. So reality is not about just you having a perfect model to attempt. I think people want to remain in school forever. This is why it irritates me a little when people say, this is an educational planet. This is a planet where we're just here to get educated. Then why is all the chaos here? Is that for education too? No. It is a movement. What if the world has a mind of its own? What if we are not, just like how there's a geocentric and heliocentric view, how one view we're wondering about the solar system as if Earth is the center, and the other view we're wondering about the solar system as if the sun is the center. So, if we are the center, it's so easy. I could look at you and be like, yo, what you're saying is different than what I see. You're wrong. Instant. It's like ethnocentric. I'm selfish. That's the thing. You know how many people are selling fish on this planet? You know how many people are selfish? I'm just saying, guys, we have, as a species, overreacted to the meaninglessness of the unknown. Therefore, the inner realms have this urge to fill up every moment, not realizing that actually the piloting, we can pilot our attention. And when I say pilot, it means with the rhythm. That means when the Wright brothers were flying for the first time, they were like, all right, we got to go with the wind. You know, we got to follow the current, you know? On some level, you can just look at life and be like, when has there ever been people? There has just been events, and people have been part of the event. You know, you can perceive it that way. But anyways, as you go up Maslow's hierarchy of needs, check this out. I don't know how much Maslow talked about this, but when you get to self-actualization, how can you actualize the self if your civilization limits you from being actualized after some point? That means you will realize let's say you've reached the top of your mountain of individual success in this life. You will realize the world, you're waiting for the world. That means once your individual life is complete, I feel your collective life begins. And your collective life, the deep down, the person knows. The person knows what rhythms they can ride. Just like you are on a surfboard and you have a sense of your foot on the surfboard, you might not be the best surfer of the waves of manifestation, but you are on a surfboard. And you can feel that, right? So right now, whoever you are, doesn't matter how. Well, first thing I'll tell you this. Knowledge can't be measured. Did you know? Did you know that the value of knowledge is different based on the consequence you want? If you want an experience, then a lot of concepts don't help you. Few concepts can just be like pointing fingers at most. If you're looking for an experience in this reality. I felt I reached a point in my own individual life in 2015, and I've shared this in maybe like 2 talks so far. So, Affluent for You, guys, before I continue, Affluent for You says an interesting point. He says one can ascend and descend Maslow in one day. Maslow's hierarchy in one day. The thing is, it takes long. It's more complex to build something than to destroy something. This is why all those human beings on this planet with a destructive urge towards the civilization, they are perceived as children, as the children, as the fool. The child is a fool. Did you know that? All children are fools. All children, any person, by the way, is a fool compared to somebody who sees more. You know? We could all be fools to aliens. Aliens are looking at us from the sky. Look at these fools. You know? Look at these fools believing their own, you know, not realizing they spark the language on this planet. The silence beyond the simulation is a very profound mystical insight. It is the realization of any animate phenomena's return and where it has originated from. You see, people don't realize they started from nothing. There was this Drake song which was like, we started from the bottom, now we're here. Guess what? Everybody started from nothing. That's the bottom of all bottoms, you know? Like sometimes I look at myself in the mirror and I'm like, man, I did good for myself. There was a time I didn't exist. It's like I'm existing now. Nice, nice, you know. Guys, it's the linguistic simulation. Somebody in the chat section, Mass, welcome everybody to the chat section, by the way, William, Fluent Mass. Mass says the entire world is under a spell and it's being broken as we speak. Let me tell you, you know how long it's been? You want to know how long that spell's been? Let me tell you what that spell is. That spell is language worship that started after idol worship. And nobody talks about this. People, it was very easy for someone to come and slap an object out of someone's hand. It's like, bro, you're worshiping a chunk of clay with feathers on it? You serious? That's no God. You know? There's only one true God. Do you know? And they slapped the idols. The idol worshippers were like, no, my gods are being slapped out of my hand. You know? But after the object was slapped out of our hand, what did we start worshiping? Language. Language is the spell. And it's not as, I mean, usually it's spelling. But I'm telling you, it's not, the human being has to be wise in not creating unnecessary inner obstacles. You see, outer obstacles, you can't do anything. Like if you want to try to climb a tree, you're looking at the tree and you want to climb the tree, and so you see it's an obstacle, it's an outer obstacle, you know? Now, an inner obstacle would be you looking at that tree. The obstacle's value externally is the same. It doesn't matter if you think it's hard or easy. It's just a tree that can be climbed, you know? So guys, just to finish off that metaphor, I'm just saying, in regards to the outer realm, climbing the tree, the challenge is the same for everyone. When you look at the inner realms, someone can choose to feel it's very difficult, and it could feel very easy. Wisdom sets the inner realms expectation of the outer realms by first looking at the outer realms, then after keeping very attentively looking at the outer realms, wondering about the subjective movement. That means, you guys might not believe it, but there's been a while. It's been a while that I don't get upset, because the reason to get upset is not that much. Because language comes and goes. That means it's like people think and they have a problem. The problem's there forever. Some children, especially, they deny their own abilities to themselves because they feel they have their problem. Just because in one moment a sort of communication was thrown at them, it's as if like gum got stuck on the shoe. The child went living many years, and that sentence from a certain memory in their childhood like bothered them. You know, I remember seeing this video. It was shocking. The video showed a bunch of these kids. Showed a bunch of these uh, people in their 40s, people in their late 30s and 40s, a bunch of people. In that commercial, it was like this commercial or something, it showed the person coming up to the camera and talking to the bully that bullied them in school. It was like a video of a bunch of people who had been bullied, but then they became really successful. And they went and they were on camera, looking at the camera and saying to the bully, they were looking at the bully and they're like, look at what I became, you know? And they're trying to still push back the bully that had pushed them years ago. Like 30 years ago, the guy had been bullied, but now he made this video to say, yeah, bully, look at where I got. And I was like, wow, you owe your life to that bully. You should go and shake the hand of that bully, because that bully was a reason for you to step out of your limitation. I feel that human nature is not good or bad. It's just set in different minds, in different realms. That means when I speak to a person, it's very immediately I can know that they are looking at the world with values that are not accessible to me. I can't see their eyes unless they share. That's the thing. That we are creatures that it's very easy. Like your eyes just open and you see stuff. But when it comes to communication and expressing what you are, then that becomes an action, you know? It becomes it becomes something that requires effort. That means, believe it or not, like I feel we are creatures that are 24/7 working all the time. We're just working towards different uh, 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 directions. That's it. That means there was a time where I thought about this concept of work, and I was like, how is it not 24/7? Because at the end of it, it's still the movement of a creature. And guys, when I say 24/7, I mean in a certain context. I don't mean like, of course, there's deep sleep. Guys, let me tell you, I gotta clarify what I meant. I meant, like, for a second, forget the idea of work, forget the concept of sleep and everything, forget the classifications of life. Imagine if the names and the concepts from reality, for a second, like Photoshop, we close the layer, the vision of the layer, okay? And for a second, we just looked at human being, we would see it's just action. So pretty much, as far as I'm concerned, living for me is eyes open, move, 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 stop, sleep, move, 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 sleep, move, 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 sleep. You know, so that is the situation, and it's kind of strange because we are like a work of art, but we don't know our own value. That's what the human being is. The human being is the rare opportunity for an artist to be able to draw itself. There is a simplicity to life that renders all stories void, and it's hilarious. And so that's why I say the meaning, the purpose of life is an opportunity. That is it. And the opportunity is how you move the pen on this piece of paper. I am moving it this way. This is how far I see, you know. And there's moments in my life where I ask myself, is the game with sight? Could there be a day where all that I have seen has to be let go, and let go by what? There's this story in Vedanta, in Vedic thought. It's the story of the two birds. It's the vision of the two birds. There is two branches on a tree, a higher branch, a lower branch. On the lower branch, we see a bird. We see a bird that from the beginning of its life has been working. Building a nest, flying, never resting. Restless bird on the lower branch. On the higher branch, you see a bird that has never moved. Is a bird that is still and watching the lower branch, lower bland, I don't know why. Lower branch, okay? And the bird is watching the lower branch. And this bird on the higher branch has never moved. It is stillness and silence. It is the attributeless watcher. When I say attributeless, that means you can try imagining. You can try it. Try imagining the attributeless, you know. Report your findings, you know. We'll all get ready to watch the comedy show. The inconceivable is the edge of thought, as far as man's concerned. But Effluent for you guys says, my point is when you have no... oh, no, that's somebody else. Mass says, my point is when you have no fear, you're undefeatable. It's a state of mind. I would say you are undefeatable to yourself, because the outer realms always have their capability. You know, that means the outer realms is unknown consequences. The inner realms, you can know the consequence to some degree. You can know, you can imagine like what it's going to happen if you throw, um, kick a ball at a window. Like you can. So this vision of the two birds was the relationship of the mind and the body. That your mind is actually the attributeless watcher of all the changing attributes that your body is going through. Guys, I will tell you, Jordan Peterson's lectures are very helpful for what I'm seeing be discussed in the chat section. Jordan Peterson said that the modern man, has forgotten the wilderness. I mean, he didn't say it in this way, but he was pointing that you, as a human being on this planet, need to, in some sense, carry a sword and shield. What does that mean? I mean, Jordan Peterson just said you got to be dangerous as a human being. That's the idea he shared. But I'm saying that you got to have a sword and shield. And what does that mean? Is that your eyes have opened to a world, and it makes sense to comprehend the intensities and sensitivities of the outer realm. That's why science for me is very crucial. You know, anyone who's ever been to an hospital, it's as if you can see how scientists are the modern angels. You know, the medical practices, it's like for me, nurses are like the closest thing to angels on this planet. Doctors, nurses, they're like those are like their pay grade of the medical. I don't know. It's like your outer realms. You got to study the nature of the biological program, and the biological program has developed into the complexity through the cultural program into now becoming a program for its civilization. You see, we can either move stuff with our hands, or we can move stuff with our attention, which is our mind. And so for me, I realized if I wanted to build a civilization from scratch with my hands, it's impossible. But I think sorry guys, I gotta check something. I'll be right back. Okay, guys, I'm back. Just give me a second. I'm trying to find a nice song to listen to in the background here. Okay, now I'm there. This is nice. Alright, guys. I don't know, this thing about silence, I'm going to go into a quote tunnel in a little bit about silence, but it's very important. It's where noise is born. If you are a speaker or a communicator, I talk about advanced communicators. I pretty much say that when it comes to human beings on this planet, I just see human beings in two ways. They're either advanced communicators or they're pilots. What does that mean? They're either self-driven towards comprehending reality, or they are other-driven. They're driven by either an other force or for other reason, because many people don't realize the spiritual relationship, the idea of man being able to contact the invisible, it was a selflessness. That means the moment you acknowledge that there's something more than the senses, then the senses is not only you, and it's you know what it is? It's like right now thinking you know who you are, and suddenly realizing there's so many unknown dimensions to you. Who knows? You could be like a great violinist, and nobody knows, and you don't even know, and unless you pick up a violin, you'll never know. Do you see? That's what I'm saying. The way reality is, we can't just have stories from outside us defining our lives, and we can't have just stories from in front of, in our inner life. And what does that mean? That means a symbiosis between the two, and that means the attention, just like a pilot navigating an airplane, the pilot has to move into various elevations. And I thought instead of a person having one belief system and going into different states of mind and thinking that belief system has to be true in all states of mind is ridiculous. It's impossible too. The pilots of consciousness navigate as their plane of existence, as I poetically say. They are human beings that have observed the humanhood into being. That means it's different ways. It's pretty much different directions. If you look at it from a secular, let's say scientific methodology, the approach is that it's an ascension. You look at all of life and you're like, we were nothing, we were dirt, and then, all right, we got up, you know? Dirt stood up on its 2 feet, guys. And what I mean is an evolutionary process from sea to even land and whatnot. The secular vision is ascension. We were nothing and we're becoming something, and we can become something great. The religious lens, the monotheistic kind, you know, the religious lens is one where it's seeing dissension. We used to be great, now we're no longer great, but if we do the right things, we can be great. If you notice this, ascension psychology and dissension psychology, you understand why the religious person, when the religious person does something wrong, it has more of a significance to the person than, for example, someone who they don't feel they're being watched by an invisible lawmaker. You see? So there is a difference in result in the inner life and outer life. And there's something strange. Many people may not realize this, but people, they don't like to be at war. No human being likes to be at war. No human being, naturally we can say, the human being wants to fight, because there's better things we can do with our time. And so anytime you see right now there's war going on, it's crazy, it's archaic, it's medieval. It's medieval how war is still going on, you know? Silence is a great authorization of the inner realms. Space Can you imagine, let me say this, can you imagine that potentially in 120 years, children will wake up not knowing, not asking the question, is life a dream, but wondering if they are trapped in cyberspace simulations? The human mind is right now progressing at a slow speed. People are like, oh, let's just be natural, all this. But there is such advanced events happening, and that will happen, do you know? That you can just see where something is being built towards. That the human notion of the individual will change so many times. We are no longer just individuals when a civilization is here. If there was no civilization, if me and you right now, there was no podcast, we were the early human beings, I wouldn't give a shit. I'd say let's just sleep all day. Do you know? But because we have this project, this global project, there is nothing else you can do on a rock in the middle of nowhere other than build an advanced civilization. And an advanced civilization would mean such a psychological advancement. Right now we're thinking, oh, that person's good, that person's bad, shun the person that's bad, celebrate the person is good. This is blindness. Every person is a movement, is a choice. There is the idea of the free will, even though if you see everything as pure materialistic, there's no such a thing as free will. How could there be free will if there wasn't even the body of the human being? The will is the transcendental factor to the moment, and transcendence is a word that only makes an entrance when the unknown has been noticed. The fear of the unknown blocks your mind. Don't fear the unknown. It is where your greater self is waiting for you. The collective unconscious is the great mystery. No longer human beings should be fascinated by just what they know, but by what they don't know. It is way more fascinating. You know, that means if somebody came and told you, do you want an answer or do you want a question? If you had a choice between getting the greatest question in existence and the greatest answer in existence, which one would you want? Most people would say the answer. Most people would say, yeah, if I don't have the answer, I'm going to question it for eternity. But some say the question. Why? Because the question keeps the unknown alive. And if someone, I will tell you, you want to know, it's not just people that are cruel. Oh, it's not just people. People are programs of their environment. And the fact that there is a mind means there is your inner environment is the accumulation of all the environments you've gone through. You're the end result sculpture of them, this idea of yourself that you think you are now. Do you know how many moments we exist through? Do you know, as I have given this talk, tomorrow I'm going to come and give another talk? You know? Now the question would be, am I the same person? Or as the world lives, perhaps it changes. The act of living. There was this philosopher, his work is, you know, I don't know if I'm pronouncing his last name right, but his name is Gilles Deleuze, and I'm probably pronouncing it wrong, but this man had this very remarkable idea, this French philosopher, Gilles Deleuze or something. Gilles Deleuze said, the act of creation is an act of resistance. That the action of the creative person in any field is resisting the past pattern to see the new. And if you understand this experientially, the stars are here for the pilots to navigate, to fly between them. As far as I'm concerned, the interstellar vision of the civilization is an obstacle course that we can't wait to get to. It's like the ultimate challenge. Could humanity extend the kingdom? Just think of our history. Imagine right now it's 10,000 years in the future, and we have overpopulated. Not only overpopulation has not been a problem, we've asked every people to have as many kids as possible because we're trying to overpopulate the galaxy, the solar system. And can you imagine the history of 10,000 years from now? Can you imagine who you will be right now to that history? I remember seeing this hilarious Facebook meme where it showed this kid in the future looking at his ancestors' kind of Facebook page, and it's like, my ancestors posted a lot of videos of cats and selfies. You know? I am telling you, this idea of God, that there is an invisible watcher, for secular society, it doesn't mean there is no invisible watcher. Do you know what this invisible watcher of the secular mind, the non-religious mind is? The future. Science, for science, the future is God. For religion, the past. For philosophy, get me out of here! You know, in my childhood, they would often say, respect your elders. Little did I know that the planet is our elder, and how many people are respecting the planet. You see, the concept of reverence and divinity had to do with the simplicity of awareness. These are different stations of mind. You know, that means you could be someone in a complex state of being right now hearing this talk. You could be someone in a simpler state of being, you know. What I see is that we are all cameras. Every human being, their brain is a camera, and from the beginning of its life, it's made recordings. Just like how I'm making a recording, the brain has been podcasting since day one. Now, I've noticed something. The inner film that this camera, that is your eyes, this biological camera, that is your eyes, that is recording everything, this inner film is either remains inside. No one ever sees the footage of your sight, or you share it with a civilization that needs as many new findings as it can get. You know, I remember I gave this talk, people should go listen to it. It's called Hunter Gatherers of the Inner Realms. And that's what we need to be. We were hunter gatherers. Back in the day, somebody went out and found berries. Can you imagine? Can you imagine? Like that person followed some mystery, went somewhere nobody else had gone, and noticed there was like a bush of berries there. And the guy's like, "Oh my God, berries! I gotta bring this back." He like gets the berries, runs back to the people. It's like, people of the world, you know, people of my tribe. I have found berries. We have found berries. And some people who didn't like the guy are like, "Ah, man, that's nothing. That's a rock. That's not a berry." And then the person's like, try it, eat it. The guy eats the berry, everybody eats the berries, and they're like, holy shit. Just like that Xbox thing, achievement unlocked, the tribe unlocked the achievement of finding berries. What does that mean? One member of the civilization flew as far as they could, found something, brought it back to the civilization, regrouped, shared it with the collective community, then groups went. And then groups went. And that's what we need. We need an educational system that is what's the term? What's the term? The greatest cavalry march of knowledge towards the unknown. You know, I had a very strange dream once. It was in a dream state. Like I was sleeping and it was a dream. In the dream, I find myself in this hallway, these giant hallways, and I notice that there is armies of what, I don't know. I think my mind at the time had seen like Lord of the Rings or something. So the Lord of the Rings 2, the, what do you call it? When they're in Helm's Deep and all the Urukai or something are outside. So it was like this Urukai modification in my dream. So what happened was, in the dream, I find myself running and I see all the halls are blocked with armies marching one by one. So I was in a hallway in a giant building seeing like an army kind of march. And what happens is the army is marching, and in the dream, I can't go anywhere. I fall down with my face on the ground so I don't see anything, and I feel endless feet walking over me. It was such a strange dream. You know? I feel, and there is no pain, there's just sensation. In the dream, I feel like being crushed. Not being crushed, not death, but I just feel the sensation of pressure. It was a strange dream, but it was a dream where it was a confrontation of chaos as my mind moved as it. You see, something I later on realized about my dream, I was never in the dream. The whole dream was me. The whole dream. That means if I dreamed of a house, that house in the dream was me. That was the grand realization of it, that attention is the primal mover. So when you study your attention, it's not something you can get a notebook and just take notes on, even though I'm encouraging everybody to be a hunter-gatherer of their inner realms. It's just that there is only one command left for the memories of starlight. Rise, mankind, rise. For now is the only stage. Now is the only stage. You know, it's fascinating. The conscious waking state is the only state of mind where you don't have to put an effort to be a human being. You are a human being in your conscious waking state. But sometimes in the navigation in the inner realms, the person can lose the identification of the human form. And how would I say it? The mind can be so complex and advanced to identify as the whole moment rather than just a character in a moment. We're not just Lego pieces in the empty space. We are the hands of the Logos, building an empire that has never existed before until now. We are the new. I would say we are our species, like Yoda called it the Force. But I'm pretty inspired by Terence McKenna's use of novelty, the word novelty. And I would say novelty is the force of the future generations. That the new will save the past, not the past. The past does not have information to see itself otherwise. You see, that means I honor my ancestors, but I don't behave like them. Why? Because I am alive in a world that they could not see. I honor their eyes, but I honor my own position. Because their eyes have come to this. My eyes are the efforts of every human being in my lineage. And it's fascinating. It's fascinating that we are a genetical echo through creaturehood. Phenomenal. I feel that the mind, the word mind, or the idea of the mind is a concept. Concepts breathe through language. Therefore, if the mind is language, and there is an observance of the mind, that means the mind can define itself, but is always beyond its own definition. Because it is seeing the empty page. You know, it's funny. Now, this is what's happened. Back in the day, it was the idea of soul. It was body and soul. There was no mind. There wasn't that much. They just felt that they were just vessels for intelligent life force beyond this dimension or something. Then when we paid more attention to the body, when we were more a creature, duality set in. So I wouldn't be surprised if we have lived through one complete end of the world before the Big Bang. Before the Big Bang, poetically, let's say, I feel there was another phase. I feel if there is a visible life, and if there is a potential invisible intelligence, you see, intelligence beyond form, what human being can you bring on this planet that could challenge that? There is no, you see, you doubt what you know. Rene Descartes, he was this methodical doubter. He doubted what he knew, but what you don't know, you can't even doubt, you can't believe or disbelieve. That means if nobody had heard of the concept of God, you know, the atheists wouldn't have a career. And the theists wouldn't be blind. We have to honor the levels of reality because that's what language is. Our biological design, and every person is a member of your species. Right now the civilization is not up to date. I'm telling you, in the future, it's going to be an honor to open your eyes in this world, not a dishonor. You know? Okay, so guys, this is the segment of the show where it's called a quote tunnel. And pretty much I'm going to read quotes. I'm going to search online and read quotes about a certain theme or a certain person in history. For today's episode, it's a theme, and it's the theme of silence. So I'm going to read a bunch of quotes about what people on this planet have said about silence, and you can kind of see the inner realms of these different people. Rumi says, "Listen to silence. It has so much to say." People are going to be like, Rumi's a comedian? What is this? Listen to silence. It has so much to say. And what it has to say, Mr. Within would say, is not in words. Rumi says, the quieter you become, the more you are able to hear. Very true. The still and silent mind sees many things that the bewildered, movement-bound, reactive movement of the creature. This movement-bound creature doesn't see a lot that happens in the silence and stillness. Eric Segal, there was a brief silence. I think I heard snow falling. Wow, that's an epic quote. Blaise Pascal, all men's miseries drive from not being able to sit in a quiet room alone. Wow, and that's what I'm talking about. High five to Blaise Pascal. Guys, I'm going to share this quote. These quotes I share in the chat section. Feel free to share in your social media with the world. Excuse me. Saying nothing sometimes says the most. Emily Dickinson. Pythagoras, a fool is known by his speech and a wise man by silence. Yep. Where should we go? Mahatma Gandhi. It is better in prayer to have a heart without words than words without a heart. Yeah, no, there's no point for human beings to act artificially intelligent before we make artificial. Charles Caleb Colton. When you have nothing to say, say nothing. Albert Einstein. The monotony and solitude of a quiet life stimulates the creative mind. Why, guys? Because in gentleness, the texture of information is different. That means I'm telling you, when I become serious, the inner realms are very different. Sometimes when I feel playful in these talks, that's when the inner realms are different. It's all about the intensity of the attention. As far as I'm concerned, I'm sitting down, pressing the record button for this live stream, and just looking at my attention and how it engages form. And the magnificent geometry of the inner realms. The inner realms has access to a geometrical expression that I have called it living geometry. And it's fascinating. A few times in my life, I've seen it solidly manifest in my inner realms. And sometimes it's been spontaneous. Sometimes my attention looked at something and I saw geometry into the moment. And there was a time where, without me even looking, I just looked at something and I could see its geometrical, animate expression. That means right now, I might be saying, right now, an evolutionary creature making sound in the void, in empty space. Okay. Now this sound, you who know the language, suddenly has meaning to you, but if there was in another wavelength, or some creature on this planet saw us, maybe they would see pure geometry. As if our sound, our brain waves have every thought, it's like a subtler geometrical expression of how the biological being can translate the moment, translate the vision. That means geometry is right there in between the symbol right there between language and the image component of the inner realms. So the words component and the image component of the inner realms. You are an infusion of these two. Haven't you noticed? Francis Bacon. Silence is the sleep that nourishes wisdom. That means that moment when a librarian is telling you, shh, you know, that librarian is trying to nourish your wisdom. Silence is like an inner realm where you're not moving, nature is moving. And the moment you can notice nature moving before you, you are free from nature's definition of you to some degree. That means when you get off the roller coaster, you're not on the roller coaster. You could be looking at it, but you're not on it. in in yoga, there's something called nirvikalpa samadhi. In nirvikalpa samadhi, the being attains a level of clarity, of self-recognition, and the recognition of the self is beyond the idea of the self, that the person in Vedic thought, in yogic thought, their next lifetime, it doesn't matter where they were born, they will attain. They are already on the roller coaster. They've already paid for the ticket of enlightenment by their attention to the realm. You know, Maxime Lagos: noise creates illusions. Silence brings truth. That's a good quote. I'm going to share that. Here, guys, you can share this on your social media. Federico Fellini: if there were a little more silence, if we all kept quiet, maybe we could understand something. See, that's the whole point. I feel if we treat the ethos, the next great story that is the inspiration of a collective, of this whole human collective, it's like a cinema. In a cinema, people quietly sit down to watch the film. So we have to literally go into a cinema and see films about what's going on in the earth and get out of those cinemas and start, building civilization. You see? Because a civilization that AI builds is not a civilization we built for ourselves. Even though AI is crucial, technology, it's very important for you to, how sometimes you pet and I like this is gonna sound strange, but like, how sometimes people pet like animals, or like what a nice puppy or something. There's been times where I thought inanimate objects could become animate, like a puppy in the future, like a computer or something. The computer could become conscious, so I just pet my computer like a puppy, hilariously. And I thought about the implication of man and machine living side by side. And we have to prepare for that too. A lot of the philosophy, scientists have pushed philosophy to the corner, but philosophy is like the older brother. What does that mean? That means scientists are going to reach certain situations where their scientific findings have to be integrated into society. Now, these scientific findings, in order to be integrated into society, have to calculate all the irrational, unknown dimensions of the human mind in their engagement with a phenomena and a form. So philosophy is as if like science has one hand on one eye. Science doesn't want to really acknowledge the unknown's potential. Wants to acknowledge only the potential of what has been seen so far. Because if you were to acknowledge the unknown potential, then you can't solidify reality. That's the issue. If the unknown is still around, then the known isn't that serious. If there is no unknown, the known is the everything in life. What we know is just we're limited to that, nothing else. That's the bunker we're in. Not realizing that perhaps behind our eyes, we've always been beyond our eyes. Andreas Franzen says, in the silence behind what can be heard lies the answers we have been searching for so long. Thomas Carlyle, speech is silver, silence is golden. That means your own silence, dear listener, is way better. You learning from your own silence and nature of mind is way better than even you hearing my talks. My talks are silver compared to you learning about your own silence, finding a moment in the day, whoever you are. whatever way you have lived. Just go and sit in nature or somewhere. Usually it's very humbling when you sit cross-legged in nature, like the Buddha or whatever. You know? They call it the lotus position. Like you can, whatever, just sit comfortably. You know, just sit a way you're comfortable. You know, where your attention's not going to be too much on how your body's going to be. You know, and for a second, look at life, and for 10 minutes, I would say 10 minutes minimum, max, go 20, or if you feel intuitively driven, go as much as you need. But minimum 10 minutes is enough for the biology to settle down, I think. 10 to 20 minutes. Depends on if you're like a marathon runner and then you want to sit down to study silence, well, that's different. Maybe 20 minutes for you. But so sit in nature, no meditation, no thought, no idea, no strategy, nothing. We want to watch the moment like our film, as if it's like we're in a film. This is an activity, this is something, and learn to watch your moment and watch what happens in your moment. Like when a person is really engaged, this makes the average filmmaker different from the great filmmaker. That the great filmmaker has created a situation where the audience can't stop looking at the screen. And when the audience can't stop looking at the screen, that means that is selflessness. It's fascinating. Do you know that the filmmaker has tapped into the fascination of people's minds? So as you study your moment, you watch, you're going to notice that the more the body becomes still, as Rumi says, the less you speak, the more you hear. Similarly, the less you physically move and watch, the more you're going to notice your mind. And this idea, I don't know what stupid person in history said, I shouldn't be rude, but what I'm saying is, like, there's been this response that people have thought meditation means to have no thoughts. Just because you're not a thought doesn't mean that thought doesn't exist. It just means you are not just a thought. So those people who sat down and they're meditating and they're like, I got too many thoughts, I can't meditate. That's wrong. Those thoughts should be there. It's okay. That's part of it. Part of it, you sit down and then you start noticing your inner realms. Then what's going to happen is your attention is going to co-create with the inner realms, so you go into a daydream. But then you're going to realize that daydream is going to be temporarily lived, because it's like thought comes and goes. And then if you sit still and silent and notice movement, you're going to start learning from the novelty of how you, for the first time, are looking at how something works to comprehend it. But it's you, your intelligence we're trying to study. And the way you study your intelligence, the first you realize nobody has your eyes. You can come even to me and say, Mr. Within, what do I do? What do I do? I'll be like, what do you want me to say? I don't have your eyes. I don't know what you're seeing. You know, you're the only one who is seeing exactly what you are seeing. The idea of you. That means unless the person communicates, nobody knows who you are. And in my youth, I was silent. You know how many rooms I've sat there silently, awkwardly? But it's like after a while, I became content with silence. Then awkwardness ceased to exist. Reality ceased to be story-oriented. That means I was attentive to the story. Living in civilization, you gotta be aware of many stories. You know, people you work with, you gotta be aware of their stories. You know. But I'm saying you got to realize they're not just their stories. Just because one person is strong one day doesn't mean they're strong their whole life. You know, reality is very performance oriented, and in the middle of this, we have to attempt the grand questions while we're here. That means because the mind is mysterious. I mean, I can say at least in this moment, I see that immortality has a use if the question is worth trying to answer. But the issue is, if the question is beyond mortality, if the answer is beyond mortality, then immortality is a noob mistake. It's like immortality is for noobs, you know? Said the mystic, you know, in the video game of life. Euripides, the good and the wise lead quiet lives. I'm pretty sure Euripides wasn't being quiet in that moment. Lao Tzu says silence is a source of great strength. Shri Ravi Shankar says inner silence is the mother of all talents. Aeschylus says, I, schooled in misery, know many purifying rites, and I know where speech is proper and where silence. Naval Ravikant, the closer you are to the truth, the more silent you become inside. Inside, yeah. Naval Ravikant is good. That's an excellent quote. And guys, that silence is, if you don't have a certain comprehension about, if you haven't studied language, you're going to go into that silence and then bounce back into a story and another story. But if you study the nature of language, the linguistic simulation, as I'm telling you, the discrimination of the attention of the inner realm and the outer realm, and how every person has their own inner realm, and the grand thing is to lift up your species while you're alive. I mean, that's really what it is. Imagine your house was by a volcano. Some guy would come, hey man, this is a volcano, get out of here. And you'd be like, oh, okay, thanks. You know? And that's how civilization advanced, guys. You know? Okay. You know, guys, I was just thinking that it's like the mind is the canvas, is like the canvas of space, and every action and every decision and every movement the human being does is like artwork on this canvas. And it's all about how you're holding the brush and the quality of the attention in the moment with the space and with the pace and timing. We are rhythmic creatures. I see it now. We are pure. We are our this nature we're all trying to find. It's like a rhythm. It's like a signal. I feel when you find this signal, you calm down, and then the world becomes your teacher. When the world becomes your teacher, you're no longer a student of the human voice. You have become the student of the experience of the cosmos. There's these talks that I call it so I've given these talks called My Humanity Arise. It's a series, and throughout these talks, like there's going to be different volumes of that same title, you know. And the idea behind it was that if we could somehow see that your future self came to you right now, how would it roar at you? The roars of the future self in the now. That is the birth of the modern responsibility. If you have a mind and you can see the future, go. Go prepare for it. Life is art in every moment. Everybody is an artist. You know, it was this grand cognition, grand revelation that I got from my studying Toronto Film School, where I realized that the vision in the eyes of the director, one can look at human life and see that everybody is an actor. So if you imagine you're a film director right now, and you're like, you have an image of something. Let's say an image of you want to make a film about mountain climbing or something. Then you go see, you can get an actor who can act like a mountain climber, or you can actually go see a mountain climber who their acting role has come from the experience. Okay. So guys, anyways, where was I going with this? The My Humanity Arise lectures, it's just this wonder, this question that, you know, even Uncle Ben, like imagine Spider-Man went to buy soup, canned soup, and he suddenly saw Uncle Ben. He starts crying and he remembers that Uncle Ben said, with great responsibility comes great power. With great power comes great responsibility. So, with great evolutionary update of creaturehood comes great power. Anyways, guys, I guess let me see. Let me read a few more quotes from the Silence quote tunnel. Henry David Thoreau says, in human intercourse, the tragedy begins not when there is misunderstanding about words, but when silence is not understood. And this is very important, guys, that silence is communication, even though there may be no words. And of course, the eyes of human beings, many human beings, understand that silence is a language. Because who you are as a being, the way you move is also a communication. You know, people think they just communicate. No, every moment is a communication of the universal sector, you could say. So to understand silence, and especially in many universities, we're seeing, like when I was in Birmingham, there was this event where this person came and spoke about this man. This man came and spoke about how his what do you call it? His sister had gotten sexually assaulted in university, and the sister had called him, the younger brother, and told this to the younger brother, and said, "Are you okay?" to the younger brother. The sister was okay, but she said it to the brother. She said to the brother, "I got sexually assaulted, but are you okay?" And the brother broke, which was the guy speaking, broke down, you know, because he's like, look at how strong my sister is. But it was also, he also saw the source of the problem. And the source of the problem is this whole thing I'm saying with inner realms and outer realms, and this domination complex that is in the cultural class. Like, it's civilization. We evolved from animals. There is violence. You got to be smart. And smartness, I would say nowadays, is alertness in a world that's being, they're pulling the rug from underneath your feet. That means the transformation of the implication of the meaning. That means it's very hard to live for the future when so many new things are endlessly every day coming into movement and position. You know, it's like, you know, who knows? As far as I'm concerned, it's like Terence McKenna would say, nobody knows enough to worry. But the thing was, that man was coming and giving a speech to all these university students and saying that, like, understand this problem is there, understand this problem exists, and silence, the silence of someone is a sign. You know, it's like, you got it. Human beings have to be very attentive. You know, and it doesn't mean because the whole act of intercourse, as through Freudian psychology, is breaking of the ego. You know, that means the action of sex and just the idea of the orgasm is like a dissolution. Is a dissolution of your individualhood in an event. It's an embodiment of the breaking of the inner realm, you can say. And of course, human psychology is so complex because it's built on layers and layers and layers. That means, imagine you open your eyes and there's a wave of information that hits you, and what is this wave? How many things? It's like you look at the effect of something and you're like, what caused that? You look at the cause and you're like, could that cause be an effect of something else? And you can see endless regression. That means at some point there is so much random stuff happening that the fact that we have managed to see each other in a changing world is remarkable. And it has to do with the pacing and the intensity of the attention and change. Right now, if the atoms that are underneath my chair were moving at a speed, were changing at a speed faster than how my chair is, it's as if there would be no foundation for there to be. That means it's like the surface of you can only walk outside if it's not like, okay, imagine you opened your house door and the street was molten lava, you know? So you'd see you can't walk on it, you know? It's like calling in to work and being like, yeah, there's lava in on the streets. I can't get to work today. There was a movie or something about this. Anyways, Albert Einstein says, I think 99 times and find nothing. I stop thinking, swim in silence, and the truth comes to me. Emily Bronte says, if I could, I would always work in silence and obscurity, and let my efforts be known by their results. That's the noble way. That's the best way to plant trees. You know? Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. All I insist on, and nothing else, is that you should show the whole world that you are not afraid. Be silent if you choose, but when it is necessary, speak, and speak in such a way that people will remember it. Oh man, Mozart. I honestly think many musicians, like people who play instruments per se, and really live instruments, I feel the same rhythms the DJ is tapping into or the dancer is tapping into, it can be implemented to articulation of, as Hegel would say, the internal object, or Kant would say noumena, the numinous internal object. Chaim Potok says, I've begun to realize that you can listen to silence and learn from it. It has a quality and dimension all its own. Euripides says silence is true wisdom's best reply. Tom Ford says time and silence are the most luxurious things today. Kapil Gupta, the things that we understand create silence. The things that we do not create emotion. Helen Keller, everything has its wonders, even darkness and silence, and I learn whatever state I am in, therein to be content. Wow. Guys, who doesn't know who Helen Keller is, go look at the documentary. This was, I would say she is by far like right up there as the most advanced human being, one of the most advanced human beings for her condition, you know. Because her awareness to her inner realms with such sensory limitation is remarkable. It's like a medal of a lifetime, you know. Sarah Dessen Sarah says silence is so freaking loud. Somebody turn down the silence for Sarah. Ralph Waldo Emerson says within us is the soul of the whole, the wise silence, the universal beauty, the eternal one, with capital I's. The Dalai Lama says sometimes silence is sometimes the best answer, especially when you don't have a translator nearby. Bless the Dalai Lama. He's a very important figure, you know, trying to... For me, what the Dalai Lama's contribution to the society has been similar to the vision of the ancient Greeks, where they would say to tame the savageness of man and make gentle the life of this world. That is the ultimate subjective aim. To continue, Cato the Elder. I think the first virtue is to restrain the tongue. He approaches nearest to gods who knows how to be silent, even though he is in the right. Mandy Hale. Don't waste words on people. Okay, there's a typo. Don't waste words on people that deserve your silence. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is nothing at all. And for how many eons can you say nothing at all, only to realize now is when the biological microphone is in your hand? Let the eternal dance in the temporary, for who has this stage been built for, and is it just a who? Charlotte Bronte. The human heart has hidden treasures, in secret kept, in silence sealed. The thoughts, the hopes, the dreams, the pleasures, whose charms were broken if revealed. Clarice Lispector. The world's continual breathing is what we hear and call silence. And that's the thing, guys. You work in silence. Inner silence, you know? And you celebrate in noise. Rumi says, in silence there is eloquence. Stop weaving and see how the pattern improves. How many quotes are there, guys? Hold on, let me check this. Oh my God, there is literally 1,000 quotes here. Alright, I'm going to stop somewhere random. Jack Kerouac says finding nirvana is like locating silence. Sogyal Rinpoche. In a world dedicated to distraction, silence and stillness terrify us. We protect ourselves from them with noise and frantic busyness. Looking into the nature of our mind is the last thing we would dare to do. You know, I hope not. I think we've made Sogyal Rinpoche proud in this moment. Anthony DeMello, silence is not the absence of sound, but the absence of self. What a remarkable sentence. I don't know who Anthony DeMello is, but this quote is of legendary proportions. Robert Greene. In most areas of life, the less you say, the more profound and mysterious you appear. You know? You know, that's to your... Okay, let's see. There is a validity to that sentence, but in a context. He says in the most areas of life, the less you say, the more profound and mysterious you appear. That's not true. That's true if the other person is just looking at you. Anton Yelchin says maybe silence is something we're uncomfortable with as a culture. I don't know. And Mr. Within will say maybe try it out, Anton. Luckman says when people are proud of their speech, be proud of your silence. Wow. So I think everybody listening to this right now is really proud of their silence. Albert Camus says those who weep for their happy periods which they encounter in history acknowledge what they want, not the alleviation but the silencing of misery. That's true, you know. That what is beauty if it's not a process? Is it just a photo on a wall? Is it a selfie on a digital wall? What is it? What is happiness? Could it be that you have to look at this life in a way where your eyes get to live their life? Could it be that happiness was never an idea, was never an object or a subject? What if happiness was effort towards a direction? What if happiness was velocity? You just had to, like, you're a creature existing at a certain pace, a certain speed, you know? And what if you became a pilot of not your dreams, but all the ways you can wake up to things in you? It is true. You can't be a soldier on a battlefield and expect not to bleed. In any war there is casualties. But the mind of man, once it finds the allegiance of the unknown,
the known bounds to what it will become. That means little do these yellow and green leaves on this tree right now I'm looking at. Little do they know they will fall one day and new leaves will arise. And so the mind of man is the tree of knowledge, and its leaves are all the ways that it can walk. One last quote. Henry Fielding. Great joy, especially after a sudden change of circumstances, is apt to be silent, and dwells rather in the heart than on the tongue. Giancarlo Esposito says, I love to read, and I like the fact that there's some silence in my life. One last one. Let's see. Scroll, stop. Emit Ray. We need silence to be able to reach ourself. Both internal and external silence is very important to feel the presence of that supreme love. And Amit Ray is right. And it's not just silence and stillness, it's the known and the unknown and various axes that can be placed. The inner realms is your attention is your mind's wings. So guys, I have set up the Discord in case people want to join the Discord and ask a question. So it's simultaneous Q&A with Discord. So the Q&A answers can be recorded even though people are asking the questions from Discord. Let's go Q&A 10 minutes and then we'll go to Discord. So anyone who's listened so far, thanks for tuning in. Really, the episode is the airplane has landed. Silence beyond the simulation. The core of existence, it arises from silence. So don't fear silence and don't fear stillness. While you're a creature that can move, become acquainted with it. Realize that life is not all about activity. Sometimes it's about how we, as Henry David Thoreau says, it's not what you're looking at that matters, it's what you see. It's how sometimes we can see. That means, what purpose does a breeze moving a leaf have? Let us see it all as a dancing, as the artwork of nature. So guys, thanks for tuning in. This is Q&A for 10 minutes. It's 8:33 right now. So for 10 minutes people can ask, and people can join Discord and ask on there as well. Thanks for listening.
So Robert says, how do you achieve silence when you can't quiet the mind? Is it just practice? No, no, no. It's not that the mind is like the only. Think of it this way: is it's a movement. Your mind. It's something that's in motion. When you just sit and just be still and silent for a while, and don't try to quiet the mind. The mind is not an object. How are you going to how are you going to know the mind is quiet if it's not an object? You know. So I would say stillness and silence is the answer. But you not thinking stillness and not having and don't have an expectation. Sit in a moment and stare at the unexpected. Just watch how everything. It's like if it stops moving, it comes to some sort of balance. You stop throwing rocks in a pond, it settles on its own. That's the whole point of it. And then once you are alert, once the attention discovers that it can function in a better way, it just automatically does. So that's the thing. You have to trust yourself. Because that's really one of the only things you can do. Like when you go get a glass of water, you got to trust the strength of your hand holding that glass of water. Okay, so when it comes to the mind or anything else, there has to be a trust, and there has to be wanting to really push aside every idea and wonder again about where am I? And start from, I say the inner realms are like you're cast away on an island. You got to build from the void. That's been the attention's been sparked out of to some degree. So that's what I would say. I would say just be still and silent for maybe 20 minutes for you, Robert. Just watch. Just like think as if your whole life is a film. You go to the cinema, you sit quietly, you watch the film. Now, we're just watching the moment as the moment. Wondering, what is this? Imagine everybody, even including me, Robert, everybody except you, got it wrong, and now you had to ask the question about what is this. I'm not saying go reinvent the wheel, but just to having the giving yourself the permission to look at something anew, pretty much. So that's my suggestion, really, because it's something that it's nature. You're a natural being. You just if you stop the physical movement, you'll notice the non-physical movement. And if you can be content and notice the silence and stillness underneath all the thoughts that moving, that you think your mind is not quiet, if you notice there's a silence beneath that in every moment. Right now I'm speaking to you, you might not realize it, but I hear my own self in silence, with a distinction from silence. Silence is very crucial. It's like breathing. So when you understand this, that reality is not just a concept, you don't get so worried about or frustrated with how should I do it? Am I doing something wrong? No. You just have to realize that there is no map to you as a being who is you have a unique DNA, and there has been no creature like you since you. So it's noticing every person is different. I would say the whole mystical path and all these meditations are just trying to get you to notice that the world is alive, but not in a personality, in a rhythmic experiential way. And its resolution is contentment. Because when you're content, you can move. Those people who are afraid, there is something happening where the fear is either taking them or pushing them, or they're running away or something, that they can't be themselves. So you gotta, for a second, ask yourself, what if you are not
wrong? And what if you are wrong, but what if you are not? How would you know? And that's the thing, that nobody has your eyes. And the inner realms are a mystery to us all. I'm just sharing my findings. So, anyways, guys, that's the end of the Q&A here. Anybody who wants to join the Discord and engage in, usually there's group discussion, feel free. So you click on the Discord link, and it takes you, you just follow the steps, and it takes you to this voice chat online platform. Blessings, thanks for listening.